Okay, in which case, while you were gone, Alana, Marwa and I had one conversation about experiments. So I thought we would read more about experiments. So if you look, can you see the chat where it says, what is an experiment?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Do you want to read the what is an experiment, the short answer, Alana?
Okay. With the do I read sorry.
Just read the first
Do I
bit.
read the top?
Yeah, you can read the
Do I
top.
read what is an experiment?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. What is an experiment? The short answer. It's in its simplest form, an experiment is simply the test of a hypothesis. A hypothesis, in turn, is a proposed relationship or an explanation of phenomena.
Excellent. So let's see if we can figure out what that is. Can either of you explain that in your own words?
What a hypothesis is, or just?
Well, that would be helpful, because in order to understand what this is saying, we probably have to know what a hypothesis is. So let's start there. What's a hypothesis?
A hypothesis is something that, or like a suggestion, or maybe an idea, or like kind of an idea that you come up with. So hypothesis, something that maybe you think about, and then maybe like there's a reason, so you explain it. That's maybe a hypothesis. I can't really explain it.
Okay. Marwa, do you have any idea what a hypothesis is, or is Alana making sense?
Maybe.
Maybe. Well, sometimes context helps. So let's look at that first sentence. In its simplest form, an experiment is simply the test of a hypothesis. So Alana, you were saying a hypothesis is like a suggestion. Is that what you're saying? Hello, Alana, can you hear me?
Oh, sorry, I couldn't. You were frozen.
Sorry. But yeah, you were saying a hypothesis is like a suggestion. Is that right?
Yeah, like a suggestion, like an idea, maybe of a question everyone's wondering about.
So in which case, what would it mean to say an experiment is simply the test of a hypothesis? What does it mean to test a hypothesis, and why is that an experiment?
Well, just to see if it's right, because an experiment, like you experiment with things. So a hypothesis, you experiment either with that hypothesis or different materials to see if that hypothesis is correct or not.
What do you think, Marwa? Is Alana making sense? He's frozen for me. Is he frozen for you?
Yes.
Okay. While he's frozen, let's go ahead and get the rest of it. Can you read the rest of it?
The rest?
Yeah, starting with
all of it?
Basics. Yeah, all of it.
Okay. Take a look at the steps of the scientific method.
You skipped over.
Make observations for.
Alana, you need to back up. You skipped.
Oh, oops. Over. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. It's hard to manage it.
Got it.
Okay.
Experiment basics.
The experiment basics. The experiment is the foundation of the scientific method, which is a systematic means of exploring the world around you. Although some experiments take place in laboratories, you could perform an experiment anywhere at any time. Take a look at the steps of the scientific method. Make observations, formulate a hypothesis, design and conduct an experiment to test the hypothesis, and evaluate the results of the experiment and accept or reject the hypothesis. If necessary, make and test a new hypothesis.
Thank you. So does all of this make sense?
Yes.
So how would you explain that in your own words? Or what's, can you give us an example of what it would be to use an experiment as part of the scientific method?
Maybe I give an example.
Please, please do.
Okay. Maybe if you were a scientist studying bioluminescence and we didn't know why it glows, they would say, maybe it glows when a certain liquid or when it's at a certain point, and then it would create an experiment, and then he or she would create an experiment to test if it's real or not. It actually isn't real, but
Got it. Got it. What, Marwa, did you get that? See if Marwa can hear us. I'm not sure you can hear us. No? So because Marwa's sound may be funny. So Alana, when you say test it to see if it's real, what do you mean by see if it's real?
excuse me?
I was asking, Alana was proposing an example of an experiment. And at the end, Alana, you said test it to see if it's real. And I was wondering what you meant by that.
Okay, like test to see if it's actually true or false.
I see, I see. And how would you know if it's true or false?
Because maybe if the experiment doesn't make sense or it just doesn't go together.
Okay. And so with bioluminescence, are you thinking of, first, maybe, Marwa, do you know what bioluminescence means? Okay, it's a pretty fancy word, Alana. So do you want to explain what bioluminescence means?
Okay, it's this, I'm not sure what it is, like chemical or thing in the water, maybe a living organ, not organ, a living thing in the water that if you shake it, it glows. Sometimes you can see it at a certain point of year in the waves, sorry, in the ocean.
Have you actually seen it, Alana?
Only a little bit.
And how do you know about it?
Me and my family, we wanted to go watch it because we knew that it would be happening because my mom saw something on the internet. So, and me and my brother asked what it was, so they told us.
Got it. And when you say a little bit, it was like in the ocean, the waves, and you saw a little bit of something light in the waves or in a jar?
Yeah. In the waves. So we were standing, I think, on the edge, I think on Mission Beach or something like that. And we were watching, and then every so often there would be like this wave that came with little bouncing light in it, and then it would go away.
A wave that came with bouncing lights? Were they like twinkling or how?
No, just more like glowing, not like glowing more, glowing less, just like staying steady, I think.
Got it. So now that you've explained what bioluminescence is and you've talked about your experience with it, could you just go ahead and explain your experiment again, just because now we have a better, clearer picture of what you're talking about?
Okay. My example was, and this is probably isn't real, but my example was if you're like a scientist or something like that, and you want to test like why bioluminescence glows, maybe your hypothesis was like it glows at a certain point, like of height or lowness in the water, and then you made this experiment to test it out.
I see. And so higher or lower in the water, are you thinking that one hypothesis or guess is that the living things, so bio, by the way, luminescence means light and bio means alive. So it means alive living things. And so you're wondering if when it's higher in the water, it glows more than when it's lower in the water?
No, I don't. That's just an example. I know it actually glows when it shakes,
I see.
or when it's rattled
Okay,
together.
but no, I think that's a great example. I think that's a great example off the top of your head. Can you come up with another example
It's another example.
of an experiment?
Maybe. Okay. Maybe I did this year. Maybe you're a little kid that's in school and you're studying experiments and hypotheses and stuff like that, and you choose a subject which, and sorry, for my school we had to do something that included magnets or space. So me and my partner chose orbit. Sorry. And so we made this model, or actually we had to do two experiments. One failed and the other one made more sense.
Mm-hmm. And why
And
did
our experiment worked.
why did
And
why did why did one make more sense? You said one made more sense. Why?
it's because one worked and one didn't, and the one that didn't work was kind of complicated,
Mm-hmm. What,
and the other one was less.
what were you trying to discover when you did that experiment?
We were trying to discover how things get out of Earth's orbit.
Got it. Marwa, it looks like you're trying to say something. Did you want to say something, Marwa? Okay. When you were holding your hand up like that, it looked like maybe you were trying to, say something. So, Marwa, have you ever done any experiments? Can you explain an experiment you did?
Not really.
Okay, not really. That's okay. So, Alana, what were you trying to discover in the experiment that you did at school?
We were trying to discover, or everyone had their own thing because you could choose what they wanted, but ours was trying to see how like different things, not rockets or anything like that, like maybe rocks get out of Earth's orbit when they got pulled in.
Got it. Got it. So do you feel as if those are, when you use experiments, either your bioluminescence example or the experiment you did at school, are those an example of the scientific method?
What do you mean by that?
Well, the paragraph we read said, after experiment basics, in that middle section, it said, the experiment is the foundation of the scientific method. And so you gave me two examples of experiments, and I'm wondering if those examples of experiments are the foundation of the scientific method, or is this talking about a different kind of experiment somehow?
I mean, they weren't, since we weren't the first to try and do those things, I guess. They weren't really the bottom foundation, but I guess in our knowledge, yes.
I see. So if I understand you correctly, you're thinking that some scientists do an experiment for the first time, and that's when you say the bottom, that's like the foundation, the real, how we get scientific knowledge. But if some of us do an experiment on our own and learn something, even though that's not the foundation, it's still our personal foundation. Am I making sense?
Yeah. Yes.
Is that what you meant?
Yes.
Okay, got it, got it.
Yes.
So do you think it's valuable for ordinary people to do experiments or only for scientists?
I think it's valuable even for ordinary people.
Okay. Do you know why you were doing experiments in school?
We had this project assigned by our teacher, So, or actually, we did this other experiment that we chose by ourselves on the last week of school, but we did that in more than two
Got it.
people.
Got it. And so would you say that experiments are part of science, all of science? What's the relationship of experiments to science?
I think it's just part of science because there's a lot of science things out there.
So what is science beyond experiments? What else is there in science beyond experiments?
There's research, there's all that other stuff that's inside research. Maybe there's getting new materials, um, things like that. I don't know all of them because I'm not a scientist myself, but yeah.
Okay. Do you think it's worth trying to understand science and how it works?
Yeah, I do think so.
Okay. Do you like science?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Marvelous. Well, I want to kind of wind up. It's good to kind of be talking again. Marwa, do you have anything to say before we call it a day? Okay. In which case, it's great to see you both and have a good week and hope to see you next weekend. Bye-bye, you two.